Hello, I'm Matt Guff from thehouse.com. I'm here with Jesse Paul. Jesse, how you doing?
Great.
Good.
How are you?
Good. Welcome back. You're home for the holidays.
Yes, I am.
Cool. You've been back for how many days now?
3 days.
2 days. Cool.
3.
3 days.
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah.
And you brought one of your boards. This is the
Yep.
the 155 Salomon Huck Knife wide. We shot this board, not this board, the other board.
I
the
think we
2008.
shot this.
Was it the same board?
Yeah. We
Cool.
talked about a couple different boards, but
Right.
this is the one I've been riding for a couple years now.
Yeah, the Huck Knife. This is one you brought over to Rock a Rail. You rode this at the Dew Tour.
Yep.
This is the board that's kind of your go-to.
It's my go-to, 100%.
What's the story behind like the Huck Knife and why do you ride the 55 wide with this thing?
Yeah, so I have a size 11 feet, so that's one thing. Solomon seems to be a little bit on the skinnier side for boards.
Sure.
Especially because somebody my size, I'm 6 feet tall, somebody might ride a bigger board than a 155,
Right.
maybe a 158. And so I like to have a slightly smaller board, and so I try to widen it out a little bit for one to match my size 11 feet, but I also I feel like it helps a little bit on rails. I just like the surface area. It might not be as zippy from edge to edge when you get a wider board, but for me, like, my feet are big enough where I don't really notice a difference in that. And I just like having more surface area when I'm on a rail. I think that it gives me a little bit more room to play around and not slip out. And, I can kind of get a little bit more pressed out if I'm sideways or things like that. It just, for me, it feels a little bit better. And I really like how on a wider board, when you're really edging into a turn, you can really get in there, especially toe side. And I love that. And also, I keep part of my edge dull, and so I think having a little bit wider board prevents it a little bit, at least, from slipping out when it's icy and I have duller edges. So
Right. Yeah, you said that well. For guys that are a little taller, maybe a little bigger, you're 6 feet, you have size 11 boots, like it's really hard to ride a regular width 155 board because usually they're like 2, 4, 5 in the middle, which is with 11 boot, it's like a lot of overhang, right? Because for a while back I rode like a 56 mid wide, and that felt good, but yeah, trying out that regular width board is like no way.
yeah,
Because you're just gonna drag toes and heels. And,
yeah.
and even like doing like you said on ripping a toe side edge, like getting down into carving when you're outside of the park, just feels really nice.
Yeah, and I have ridden this exact board 55 and 55 wide, and I really do notice the slight differences of the narrower board. If I really want to be like like really quick edge to edge,
Right.
it's a little bit quicker. But just that feeling of being able to like really rely on your board a little bit more, and less of that point of no return where you go,
Right.
Exactly.
Cool. Now the feel and flex of this board, where would you kind of rate that in the gauge, both torsional, like this way, and longitudinal? Like, where would you say the flex of this board rates from 1 being really soft and 10 being really stiff?
I would probably put it's very in the middle.
Okay.
Maybe even to a 4, like
Okay.
between 4 and 5.
All right.
For me, I think. It's a pretty soft board, especially. I have pretty muscular legs. I weigh like 175 and I'm 6 feet tall. So I have the ability to really flex a board, and I find it to be pretty soft. I know other people also find it to be pretty soft as well, but definitely find it in that medium flex. It's got really good torsional flex, which is one of my favorite things in a board. And I really think about and utilize torsional flex. I think that, if you think about it, that's the only reason you can do a 360 out of a 50-50. It's because if it didn't flex torsionally, if you tried to grip on the rail, you'd be like, it's that torsional flex that allows you to, do that. So torsional flex, it flexes great torsionally. And it flexes really evenly across the board. It's really playful, but since it's a camber profile for the most part, it holds an edge pretty well, and it doesn't really loop out. Soft camber is my favorite type of board, especially for hitting rails and things like that. It's just what I prefer because when you get into a press, you can really press it out, but you can build up that pressure where I feel like sometimes reverse camber boards, it's more of a balance point and less of a pressure point.
Right.
And I really like the pressure point. So it also has a really interesting flex pattern because it's thicker in the middle of the board, and then it gets a little bit thinner here, and then it gets a little bit thicker again here outside the bindings. And so it actually allows you if you really are on a press, you can see the board kind of flexes right on the inside of your foot.
Because it's a little thinner there.
Yeah, so because it's a little thinner there. And to me, I really like how that feels because you can be on the press and really still be on your foot, and then it lifts up right there. So you have a foot on the ground, you're solid, and then you can keep lifting it up. Where I've had boards in the past that flex really on the outside of your foot,
right.
And sometimes if you get a little high, you're kind of off the rail and you can lose your balance a little bit. So,
right.
I really appreciate that about this board. And then also the thicker middle helps when you're really smashing onto something. It's not weak in the middle of the board. It's very strong. Right. So never broken this board in the middle. I actually don't know if I've ever broken this board since I've upgraded to a 55 wide.
And you were that's crazy because you're one of the hardest riding street riders out there. Yeah. You hit some really big stuff and do some gnarly.
Yeah, this board can handle it. It's really impressive actually. Sometimes I'm blown away. So
yeah.
It's a great board.
I really like how you explained the feel of the press. How a camber board, it's kind of like a pressure concept. Like you can keep applying more pressure, and then I suppose when you pop out of it, it kind of
it flexes back. Gives you good pop as well.
Right, and then but when you're on a rocker board, it's just like a balance point where you don't tip over or like press too much over the nose or over the tail.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Now with the side cuts on Salomon boards are very unique. They do kind of like straight lines that reside kind of like on a radius. I believe this has the EQ RD or equalizer rad.
Yeah.
What does that feel like to you?
It's EQ rad, and EQ is equalizer, rad is radial. To me, I can't say specifically just because I've ridden this type of edge construction for a long time.
Okay, yeah.
But when I go to ride just a normal radial board, I definitely am like, whoa, this feels way looser than normal. Like,
really?
I definitely, I guess I do notice. It's not often but if I strap it on a friend's board and they just have a normal radial edge, it just feels mushier on edge. Like this almost, it's kind of like you're like grabbing it, in a way.
Yeah.
And it's similar technology as something like magnet traction. It basically just, instead of having a really smooth radius where there's not really any distinct points of pressure, having the variability, it allows pressure to build in specific spots. And so you're kind of, it's like, I don't know, if you look at my fingers and I'm like grabbing like this versus grabbing with like one big, like a butter knife or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I understand.
But yeah, it feels good to me. I dull my edges from here to here.
In between your feet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I never have a problem like losing my edge really, unless it's insanely icy. So, to me it works pretty well. Cool.
Do you ever detune your contact points, or are they kind of just?
No.
Nope.
I don't.
Just between
they
the feet.
detune on their own from riding rails. But I actually like it better when they're sharp, because that's where the turn initiates. And if you've never ridden a board with sharp edges, fully sharp edges, for all those park kids out there, give it a try because it's a beautiful thing. It is amazing.
It is nice.
If you're just ripping, turning on groomers with sharp edges, you have so much power, so much control. And so I like to hold on to a little bit of that. And actually, I would like to eventually not do anything to my edges. I'm pretty sure Louis doesn't do anything to his edges.
Really?
Yeah. But I'm not there yet. But I think that would be cool to be able to still have that edge power.
Cool.
But then it's riskier because if you do catch, you're gonna be
catching hard.
Flying. But
yeah. Now this board has a lot of pros, especially in the park. For someone who wants to take a Huck Knife and do just kind of like all mountain cruising, like you said, like on groomers, like they want to go into the trees and maybe even use it in the pile occasionally. How does a Huck Knife perform for you in those conditions?
It works really well across the board for me, for everything except I don't particularly like riding it in powder.
Okay.
I just think that a soft camber construction isn't really lined up to that kind of riding because you want to, if you're basically always pressing when you're riding in powder on this thing, which it can work, especially if you've got a good wax going on, but it's just a lot more effort than riding something that either has rocker on the ends or just like a full-on reverse camber type of board. Even boards like the Villain, I really like riding that in powder because it's
flat, isn't it?
No, it's flat in the middle and then camber under feet and then rocker on the ends. Yeah. And so you kind of still get the stability that you get of a camber board, which I really enjoy, but the rocker nose and tail allow you to just kind of stay above without too much effort.
Without working too hard for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as far as like just this board turns like a dream, especially when the edges are at least a little bit sharp. But even when they're not, if it's good snow, you're turning like no problem. Right. Toe side and heel side. It holds really well at high speeds. And yeah, it's the best park board I've ever ridden. That's why I've ridden it for I think 3 or 4 seasons now. Nothing has felt as good to me on rails than this thing.
Than the Huck Knife.
Yeah, especially if you're a kind of person who really, you really like to handle your board and really push it through things and use strength, I guess. Yep. I know, some people like a reverse camber board because it's a little more playful and you can kind of just like, where this board, I'm pressing, I'm gonna jam that thing in there, and this board is perfect for something like that. So.
Cool. Now you mentioned that you wax your board a lot, and that's I think kind of uncommon for a lot of guys that ride the street or even park riders. Like most park riders I know, they never wax their board. Every once in a while, I think Tony Wagner waxes his deck up, but like there's a lot of guys that don't wax their board. The Huck Knife has a sintered base. It's not an extruded base. Why do you like sintered bases?
I like sintered base just because I like to be going as fast as I possibly can. Okay. And when this baby is freshly waxed up, it is like butter on the snow. And I just like I like how it's sintered. It's kind of a higher quality, and I think it's a little more consistent, especially if you keep it waxed, where an extruded base can kind of just get worse and worse over time. I feel like this one, obviously I need a wax right now, but when I get it waxed up and I scrape it and it's nice smooth bottom, it feels like brand new every time. Yeah. And it holds wax really well, which extruded bases don't seem to hold wax as well. But yeah, I wax pretty regularly, probably every 3 times I snowboard.
Awesome. Yeah, that is a lot. That is a lot.
Just because I'm kind of crazy when it comes to having everything like nice and perfect, and I really like how it feels when everything's all smoothed out. Mainly, actually, one of the biggest reasons is because I ride rails so much in park, and especially street, is you get all these little burrs. Like no matter what, you're gonna get these little things in your base, and when you wax it, it just kind of like levels the playing field and gets rid of all the small scratches, fills in some of the bigger ones with wax. Right. And sometimes I'll even do what's called a hot scrape, which, wax it and scrape it instantly, especially with a metal scraper. It's kind of a good replacement for a base grind if you don't have time or want to do that. It just gets rid of some of the bigger stuff. But yeah, big fan of waxing.
Can you tell the difference? Can you tell the difference? If we were to take this deck and the exact same board, and one would be waxed and one would be not waxed, do you think you could feel the difference?
I think so, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Especially if it's the right temperature wax. Yeah.
Right, definitely. Temp specific. It's weird. Like, sometimes I'll wax a board. I like temp specific Swix wax. But yeah, you can tell when you got the wrong wax on, or when it's not waxed at all. It's like when you get new snow and those crystals are really sharp and abrasive. Like they'll pull your wax out of your board really fast. And I have to wax my boards because I know that if I'm on an unwaxed board, I can feel it and I know I can go faster. And I can it just bugs me. Yeah. I know I can be going faster now.
I know what you mean.
Right.
Yeah, and I know some people wax their board and they don't scrape. And that drives me crazy. I tried it once, and I was like, this is the worst decision of my life. The whole day, I could, like, feel that layer of wax.
Yeah.
I mean, it got, like, over time, it gets rid of it. And it mostly got rid of it, but then, you know, you tend to get a little bit of a divot where your bindings go, and there was just, like, a little cake of wax right there. And as soon as I got home, I just, like,
get it out of there.
Me. And I also feel like... on rails, when you have a nice waxed board, you're less prone to sticky rails.
Right.
I mean, if there's a sticky rail, you're probably going to stick either way.
Right.
But I've definitely noticed that when I have a fresh wax, and some people are like, oh, that rail's so sticky, and I'm gliding across it. I'm like, well, I'm glad I waxed. So that's also a big part about it.
Good call. Now, for anyone out there who's watching and they're thinking about getting a Huck Knife or another board, what kind of words of advice would you have for them about the board that would incline them to go, you should get this board?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, first of all, beautiful graphic.
It's always got a great graphic.
Always has had such a good graphic, really solid, just really clean. Mm-hmm. The shape of the board, I think, looks really nice, symmetrical. But really, it's like, if you're going to spend your money on a board and you're a person who you know, because this is kind of a higher end board compared to other park boards. But if you want just like a good solid board that's going to last you a really long time and it's going to be the best board you could ride on groomers and in the park. And then maybe you have a different board for powder, or maybe you don't experience that much powder where you live. This is definitely the board. It's playful enough with how soft it is, but it's structured so well that it doesn't feel like a loosey-goosey board by any means.
Right.
So for me, it's a really like baseline. I can use the same size board when I'm hitting small park jibs and huge street features.
Cool.
Just because it can handle at high speeds and it can flex when I want it to, but it doesn't. I almost never loop out on this board.
Awesome.
Especially when you got the right width, depending on your foot size and stuff like that.
Right. So. And we have a perfect stance that's 9'9" and 25 wide.
Yeah.
22 wide.
Yeah, 25 wide. That would be pretty crazy.
Awesome. Jesse, man, thanks for being here. Thanks for walking us through the deck.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for watching. If you have comments or questions about the Huck Knife, leave them below. Subscribe to the channel there. Check out more vids there. And hopefully see you guys around. Peace.
See you later.